at one time or another, in one place or another, it can happen to any of us. For the first century Jewish man named Saul, it happened on the way to the city of Damascus. His heart, consumed by the fire of religious zealotry, convinced Saul that he was so right in what he believed about God that it granted him divine permission to punish, even kill others in order to stop heresy. Now, Saul was well educated. He was devout. He was confident in his faith and in his values. He knew the good guys and he knew who was the bad guys. And that was the people that weren't on God's side. His mission in life, therefore, was to silence the people who disagreed with him. But it all changed one day when Saul had this transforming life experience of the Spirit of the risen Christ in his life. And you know, Saul became Paul. Not only did his life change, so did his theology, his beliefs about God. Now, for us, the venue may be different. It may happen in a university class, a hospital room, a church sanctuary, or maybe in the great outdoors, or on a plot of land which you are building a house and you want to set down all your earthly possessions and try and make a home and a life. Wherever we are, whatever our intentions, we sense something has changed in us. Maybe we read a book. Maybe we hear a lecture or attend a church service. Maybe it's the sound of an ambulance siren or the coo of a baby or the shout of a voice. But suddenly we realize our beliefs about God are changing. From a spiritual perspective, I will tell you, if you study human history, beliefs about God have always been evolving in every generation, and they will continue to do so. So the sermon this morning consists of a single question that I challenge us to answer honestly. What do we believe about God? Now, I'm not inquiring about what you think you ought to believe, as if there is a single right answer, or what your parents taught you, or a Sunday school teacher taught you to believe, or what you think the pastor wants you to believe. My question is very personal. What do you believe? What do I believe? What do we believe who call ourselves progressive Christians? What do we tend to hold to and promote? Now, you don't have to share with anyone today what you believe about God unless you choose to do so. Although I will tell you, as a minister, there's nothing that I value more than the opportunity to hear you share your credo. You know my views. However, the God question is a big one, and we do need to ponder it and come up with our own answers. Because to a staggering extent, our beliefs, whether they're acknowledged or just unconscious, they do determine the priorities and the direction of our lives. How you see yourself, how you see others, how you see the world, how we make and spend money, how we treat others, what we believe to be true, our social and political persuasions, what we consider essential and what we choose to ignore. Beliefs matter, especially beliefs about God. Now, it might help first to attempt a clarification of what we mean by the nature of belief in general. So by belief, I'm not talking about doctrines or theological positions. I'm not even saying it has to be religious. According to the very fine biblical scholar Karen Armstrong, the Latin word credo means I give my heart to. So belief is a commitment on which you're willing to stake your life. Indeed, the old Middle English word believen, it meant to love. In the 20th century, our great Protestant theologian Paul Tillich once said, "Whatever is of ultimate concern to you is your God." So belief is the basic assumptions on which you build your life and for which you're willing to give your life. Now, here comes the theology teaching part. For centuries, The dominant view of God in Western culture and religion has been that of a supernatural being, one not bound by the laws of nature, who is all powerful, all knowing, and all present. This God can and does periodically, it is said, invade the world in miraculous ways to establish divine will or maybe to answer specific prayers. If you accept that definition of God, then you're called a theist. If you don't, you're an atheist. Polls consistently show, though, that more and more sensitive thinking modern people, especially young people, are saying, well, if that's the definition of God, count me as an atheist. They are rejecting belief in God as a supernatural being. And I want to say to them, as I do at the college and everywhere I can, as a progressive Christian, I agree with you. Which is why Reverend Fred Plummer mentioned in the little film that progressive Christians are often accused of being atheists. Well, if progressive Christians generally reject this dominant definition and belief about a supernatural God, then what do we believe? Well, the prevailing belief about God among progressive Christian scholars and pastors and leaders is called panentheism. Sometimes it's called process theology. Sometimes it's called evolutionary spirituality or Christianity. But it's one in which God and the world are understood as being in a dynamic, interdependent relationship. Panentheism literally means all is in God, and God is in all. Now, rather than going on and engaging in a lengthy metaphysical discourse on the philosophies and the science that's behind process theology, instead let me use a metaphor. One I will borrow from progressive Christian scholar Sally Maffei to try and explain this relationship between what we call God and the world. You have to understand all theology, all God talk is in metaphors, because only metaphors can provide us that intuitive grasp, give us conceptions and pictures of maybe what and how God is. Now, in Sally's metaphor, God is the mind or the soul of the world, and the world is the body of God. Neither can exist or even be described without the other, but neither is totally identical with the other. In my everyday human experience, and I'm going to assume this is true for you too, unless I am totally disabled, what I call my mind has the capacity to move my body in certain ways. And my body, with all of its sense organs and eternal processes, is utterly necessary to sustain my mind. And by the way, what the mind is beyond brain tissue, well, that's a great mystery too, isn't it? Just like God. So in panentheism, God acts within and in concert with the world, but only within the laws of nature. No supernatural God is involved or needed here. God cannot make the world do anything unnatural any more than my mind can make my body do anything for which it is not programmed. So in short, we say in process thought, we're willing to admit we don't believe God is all-powerful. God is not omnipotent. As Ron Farmer over at Chapman University used to say, omnipotence was a bad idea. However, even science tells us that most of us are only using about 10% of our brain. So there is no telling what amazing things we have yet to discover that we can do. Our consciousness and God's ability to evolve go together. We, God and us, are growing together in and through the processes of life. That's why we call it process theology. Now, one of the benefits of believing about God this way is it's consistent with science. From the Big Bang to quantum mechanics. We don't argue against evolution. We think that's part of the process of which God is a part too. Process theology doesn't ask us to believe impossible things or to check our brains at the door when we come to church. Another benefit of this view, naturalistic view of God, is it, I believe, is better equipped to answer the question of evil in the world by admitting that God is not omnipotent and all-powerful. Then God is also not responsible for everything that happens. Progressive Christianity does not embrace divine omniscience either, that God has the power to know everything. The future is even unknown to God in this model. What God does know are the possibilities for the future. And God is the Spirit that's luring us, encouraging us into that greater future. I realize for many people this can be scary stuff, because belief in an all-powerful, all-knowing God does provide a certain measure of security. And that belief emerged in the ancient world when powerful rulers rose up to unify people and to impose order and protect subjects from threats, both natural and human. God became a cosmic monarch. And if God is in control like that, then whatever happens must be God's will, even if we don't understand it, or even if it allows for evil. That's what I grew up being taught. But progressive Christianity is willing to forego these beliefs about an all-powerful and all-knowing God in order that we can maintain a belief in an all-loving God. That God is the one we see and hear and know through the life and the teachings and the Spirit of Jesus of Nazareth and other spiritual masters who have embodied, there's the metaphor again, God's love better than most of us have. But that potential is there for all of us. Now, if we're right about this theology and this fundamental characteristics of God, that God's not all-powerful or all-knowing, but God is all-compassionate, then everything else we believe has to be compatible with that basic belief in God. So you look at our Christian tradition. I think this message was always there. What are the chief symbols of God? A newborn peasant in a manger, a child who grows up to be a wisdom teacher, a prophet who speaks out for social justice, a healer who brings peace to troubled lives, a lonely preacher hanging on a cross, forgiving his enemies and even doubting God, a manger, a prophet, a cross. These are not symbols of a cosmic monarch, but of a God whose place is in the cosmos, among creation, experiencing all the realities of life, chance as well as order, human and non-human, animate and inanimate, the good, the bad, the joys, the sorrows, the living, the dying. This is the God who creates and transforms us by way of persuasive love, not coercive power. However, in the end, beyond anything I can say, beyond all theologies and metaphors, God is very personal. God is an experience. And no two people, as Kell said, will have it in the same way. And the error that religion has made over and over again is to come up with doctrines about God. And we all know about the wars that have been fought over whose God is more powerful. If instead there is a marvelous and awesome mystery in the world about which we can speak in religious terms, we can call God, then it's possible for us to embrace that mystery, to be one with God, however understood. But I want to also say, for those that don't feel comfortable using religious language and don't like the word God, we need to say that's okay too for where they are in their journey of life, for whatever they're experiencing. Well, like so many in the progressive Christian movement, I didn't come to this point overnight. I have evolved through many years theologically. I have moved from a theistic understanding of God to a non-theistic experiential. This does not mean that God is any less real for me. Indeed, it's just the opposite. When I speak about God now, I realize I'm only using words and symbols to try and share my experience of life as sacred, as this source of life and love, the ground of my being. And so when I say to people, when they ask, do you believe in God? I say, yes, I believe in God. But when I say that, I'm saying I believe in an experience that intimately and extensively connects me to all that is. That's my answer. What's yours? However you would answer this question, however you respond to what I'm saying this morning, I do invite you to live with this process thought, this panentheism. Ponder its wisdom, and then share with me your experiences. Tell me what you believe about God. Amen.